Welcome to the Sports and Stilettos podcast. Hello, everybody. Can you believe that we are on week 5 of the Sports and Stilettos podcast? Make sure you hit that subscribe button. Hopefully, you guys are loving this podcast just as much as I am. This might be one of my favorite interviews that I've ever done. I'm talking to Cayleigh Griffin, the Houston Rockets courtside reporter. Cayleigh is so genuine and so inspiring to so many women. I loved sitting down and talking with her. Of course, technology doesn't always work, and it did cut out my question to her, just asking her how she was doing. So, without further ado, here's how Cayleigh Griffin is doing.
It's crazy. I mean, we're supposed to be in the first round of the playoffs right now, so it's just been so strange. We're trying to, stay as busy as possible. We do a lot of Instagram live videos. We're starting to do some Zoom interviews too, which is cool, but it's just different, when we were in the thick of things, getting ready to go on a big road trip, and now we're kind of just sitting here waiting to see what happens. It's so strange, but I actually was just, I was standing outside my balcony, and my upstairs neighbor just literally started a rock concert on this balcony, and I'm like, oh my God, please stop this right now, because of course I'm about to get on this call, and I'm not kidding you, he has a concert going up on his balcony, and people are yelling at him. Everyone is losing their mind right now. It's crazy.
Well, I'm surprised I can't hear it, not at all.
He just went inside because I literally was like, you gotta be kidding me. You have to be kidding me. It was 2:30 in the afternoon, but people I was watching because he's directly above me. And he's on the phone at midnight, cursing up a storm all the time. I'm like, this guy is nuts. But I could see people across the way, and they're all like, shut it down. Everyone's losing it. We're all done. We've all reached that point. But how are you doing?
I'm good. Yeah, good. Just trying to get outside, enjoy the nice weather. It's like 70s here in Denver, so it's really perfect. What's it like
awesome.
down in Houston?
It's in the 80s right now. It's been warm. I mean, we're starting to hit the point where it's pretty consistently warm all the time, but everyone's just wait, it gets so much worse, which I lived in San Antonio for 2 years, so I have an idea of what it gets like. But the humidity here, they say, is just disgusting. So not looking forward to that, but right now I can at least go outside a little bit. It's sunny, which is nice, and just get some fresh air, which is good.
What'd you do for your workout?
I have a bunch of bands, so I ordered just all different leg bands, and then the ones with the handles and stuff like that. So I've been doing them on my door, and I just went for a run. So just trying to switch it up as much as possible. I'm kind of going crazy. I love being in the gym, and so for me, I'm like, how do I get crazy? I'm always amazed though right now seeing how many people have weights. I'm like, who has weights? I do not have weights sitting around. Maybe I've moved too much to even consider that, but I'm like, I usually always pick an apartment with a gym in it, so I am always consistently having it. But I feel like everyone has weights now, and I'm like, damn, I should get on that. Just in case we ever have a pandemic.
Just bought some at Target. I was walking through Target, and I was like, man, I wonder if they have any, and they had 5-pound weights and 3-pound. So I was like, well, I might as well pick up 5 pounds, because who knows when a gym is going to open up.
Oh gosh, for sure. That's at least the bands. I have a 5-pound one, then a 15-pound one, and a 25. So it does the gist of it for now. We can make it work.
Was there any part of you that wanted to go home?
I do, and I think I'm still debating going home. My mom, so it's been crazy actually. My dad is in LA. He's been stuck there for over 6 weeks now. He was there for just work meetings. He was there supposed to be a 4-day trip, and then someone in his meetings got the coronavirus, so they kept them there. And while they were in their 2-week quarantine, there was 5 of them in an Airbnb, and then someone in his Airbnb got it. And so he's been just stuck there. And then it's a company-wide thing, but someone in his company that was in Chicago thought he could just go home. He's like, I'll be fine, whatever. And he ended up dying from it. So their company is like, everyone, you're staying where you are. Don't think about it. And he just emailed us today. Of course, his phone's not working. Everything is breaking down, but his phone stopped working. He emailed us today. Another one of his roommates tested positive for it that he's staying with. So he's been out there for over 6 weeks now. He's got to do another 2-week quarantine. I feel so bad for him. It's just been a lot. I know. So he's 60. He's going to be 62 in June. So he is in great shape, great health, but he's just you just don't know. That's the scariest part about the virus, is you just don't know how you're going to react to it. So he's pretty much staying put. My mom is freaking out about that, of course, but I've been debating going home, but it's still just the risk of it. You just don't know what to do. I have 2 sisters, and my youngest sister's turning 21 in 2 weeks. So I really wanted to go home for that since I didn't think I would be able to anyway. So I'm debating. I'm like, should I do it? Do I just pack for a while? There's so much unknown of if we're going to come back, when we're going to come back. So it's just kind of at a dead end right now of trying to figure out what to do, but I'd love to go home just because I've been here by myself now for a couple weeks, just kind of hanging in my apartment. So we'll see.
I listened to a podcast and you said you're very into cooking right now.
I am. I've been really into cooking. I always love to cook. Like I really have one of those people when you're on the road so much that we eat in restaurants all the time. So when you come home, you kind of just don't want to do that. And so my first thing I always do when we come home from road trips, even if it's for 3 days, is to go to the grocery store and just pick up some groceries and what have you. And so I've been trying to do that as much, obviously not going to the grocery store that much, but like every couple of weeks going and making a big shopping trip. And it's been good. I mean, I enjoy cooking. And then of course I've been trying to, when I do want to get takeout, support some of the local businesses here in Houston. They have some great little restaurants. So I've been trying to do that as much as possible too.
What's been your favorite thing to cook?
Oh gosh. Probably chicken parm. Love a good Italian food. So mixing it up with some chicken parm there, that's one of my go-to meals, I'd say. But I also just trying to stay healthy too, buying a lot of vegetables, trying different dishes with that. So
Nice. I might have to steal some recipes from you or like trying to cook. I'm not huge. My mom was like an amazing cook, right?
Okay.
And then I was like, maybe I'll get the gene. And I just feel like I did not get the gene at all.
My mom is the same way. She cooked for us all the time. She still does. And we're slowly getting there. You know, it's going to take a little bit of time, and we don't have that much time in this industry to have the opportunity to just come home and cook all the time. We're usually in arenas, at fields, stuff like that. So trying to take this time to sharpen my skills a little bit.
So true. What would you say if you had to estimate when you think the NBA will come back? When do you think? Even if they don't?
I honestly have no idea, to be honest. I've talked to so many different people and have tried to gauge everyone's impressions of what's going to happen. And I don't know. I think there's a lot of hope that it will come back. I've had conversations and done Instagram live interviews with our general manager, our president and CEO, and even our head coach last night. And I think there's a lot of hope that it will, but there's just so much unknown out there of how the virus is spreading. And obviously the priority is to keep everyone safe. And the NBA was clearly at the forefront of that. By the first player tested positive, they shut down and suspended the league right away. And then every other league kind of followed suit after that. So I know Adam Silver and the leadership at the NBA has the information and they're doing the best they can with it. We're all hopeful that we'll get some basketball in again, but the priority is keeping not only the players safe, but the staff, the fans. I believe that if we do come back, there will be no fans, but there's still so many other people involved with getting this set up, from the training staffs to broadcasters. Our roles will be a lot bigger because obviously everyone will be taking it in from watching the game. So it's just so much unknown right now. I think we're all really hoping for the best, but we have no idea. And it's really crazy to think that we're just kind of in this middle ground right now, anticipating and hoping for the best, but we just don't know.
Do you think that the players, obviously you've gotten to know them quite well, do you think they would even want to play without fans?
I think they do. I think some of them would. I think just because of the way it all shut down and there's still a month and a half left of the regular season, that there's a hope and a desire to finish the season and to crown a champion. And obviously I don't think we're not going to be able to play it all out like we would have been. It'll just take too long. But I think there's a hope that there's some closure of the year and not that we just end March, whatever, 13th, 14th it was, and that be it. I think the players have a hope that they'll be able to close it by crowning some sort of champion. Again, I think a lot of our players are realists too and understand that, safety is the top priority here. And we just have to make sure that it's okay for everyone to come back, because I don't imagine any of them want to risk getting sick either. So I think everyone just wants to take the right precautions, but I think there is a desire to crown a champion at some point.
When the NBA postponed the season, I know you weren't on the road because the team had left. Were you at home?
Yes.
Were you in studio? Where were you at?
I was at home. The team was going to Los Angeles. They had a game against the Lakers the next day, and then they were going to Portland, and they were both national games. So I think one was TNT and then one was ABC. So there are certain exclusives. If it's on ABC, we don't do the games at all. And then there are certain exclusives that ESPN and TNT have, where sometimes if it's on TNT or ESPN, we can do it too. But that one was an exclusive. So we weren't going on that trip. So I was at home. I happened to be watching the Denver-Dallas game that was going on. And our Astros reporter down here, Julia Morales-Clark, texted me. She was down in spring training with the Astros, and she was like, what's going on with the Thunder Jazz game? And I didn't know. I wasn't on my computer. I wasn't on Twitter. I was just watching the game. And so I go on Twitter and I see all these people tweeting about it, and I'm like, what the heck? So I pull up League Pass and I go on, and it's just showing, I don't remember which broadcast, either the Jazz or the Thunder broadcast I was watching, and obviously they're just kind of panning around. No one really knows what's going on, and then it comes out that the game's been suspended or canceled, whatever it said, and then it kind of just started spiraling that all of these things were coming out, and then I was glued to my computer and my TV for the rest of the night, waiting to see what was happening. And so it was kind of a surreal thing, taking it all in. I'm texting my producer, I'm texting my pregame producer. We're all like, what the heck is going on? Because the night before is when the NBA started implementing all of the precautions for the coronavirus. We had no more availability in the locker room. We had to have everyone at the podium. We couldn't do scrums anymore. I couldn't do walk-offs on the court, so I couldn't do my halftime or post-game interview. I could do a post-game interview with a boom mic. So we were all in this weird in-between. We were just like, what the heck is this? And nobody even really understood how serious it was at that time, because it was just starting to come, or as we've come to find out, it was already spreading. But from what we knew, it wasn't a big deal yet. And so seeing a player confirmed with the virus that soon after they had just started implementing all those rules, I think was a wake-up call for everybody. But I was just sitting on my computer, watching TV, expecting to have a calm, normal night, just taking it in, and everything, my world was flipped upside down. It was wild. It was just wild. But no, I was just at my house, kind of just talking to everybody. I mean, my phone was blowing up. Everyone's like, what's going to happen? I'm like, I don't know. I don't even know. I thought we were going to enjoy 4 days here in Houston, which we never get because the team was on the road and we weren't going. And I'm like, oh my God, I have no idea what's happening right now. It was wild.
Do you think, or I guess at the time, did you think it was going to last this long? Or were you expecting it to be like, oh, it's going to be like 3 weeks and then things will kind of go back to normal?
I think I kind of expected it to be this long just from what I had seen in China and what was happening in Italy. I had kind of been following the news of the virus since it started in late December, early January. So I had been paying closer attention to it than I think maybe a lot of people had been. And I'd seen how bad it was. And so I kind of expected it to be a long time. I don't necessarily think that I expected it for us to still have this much unknown, and that we are just continuing to go forward every day, and we have really no updates, and we don't know if we're going to be able to get back or when the country as a whole is going to be able to kind of go back to some sort of normal. But yeah, it was, I kind of anticipated it being a while, especially once a player tested positive, because there's so much contact between those guys, and you're seeing people get the virus just by being in the same vicinity as them. And these players are bumping each other, they're sweating on each other, they're all over just playing the game naturally, that it's just such a huge risk. And when a player gets it, then you can't control that when they're playing the game. So kind of anticipated it, but I think still having so much unknown, I didn't anticipate.
2020 has been a rough year in the sports world for sure. And you were at the Nuggets Rockets game on January 26th when it came about that Kobe had passed. What were the emotions like, and having to do interviews that day?
I can't even, it was such a surreal day. So we were on the second game of a 4-game road trip. We had just been in Minnesota. We had a 1 p.m. game in Denver. And so we were the first game of the day. still don't know why our game was so early. We were trying to figure it out because usually when the games are broadcasting in Europe or something, there's probably like a 4 or 5 o'clock game. They're a little bit later, but ours was at 1 o'clock. We couldn't figure it out, but we're like, all right. And kind of the day already was a little bit strange because you're starting so early. You're used to starting at least 7 o'clock. So I was up at 7 at Starbucks, ran into coach over there. You're just kind of all over the place trying to figure out how to go through a new normal at that early time, getting to the arena at 10 a.m. and stuff like that. And I was sitting at my desk for the game, and we were getting ready to go to the pregame show in about 25 minutes. And so before I go on the pregame show, I usually run through my first hit of the game with my producer. And so he was over there talking to me, and we were just kind of going through what I was going to say off the top when they threw to me, what I needed to go into graphic for, what we wanted to go, whatever. Really like 5 minutes, just making sure we have that lined up. And he was like, okay, cool, I'm going to go talk to the guys. And then he comes back to me like 2 minutes later, not even, and goes, I can't believe you didn't tell me. And I was like, what are you talking about? And he goes, Kobe died. And I was like, what do you, like, I not comprehending. He's like, Kobe Bryant just died. And I nothing was going through my head. I was like, what are you talking about? LeBron James just passed him last night in scoring. What, like, this doesn't make any, it wasn't hitting me at all. And then of course, so now I'm going on my phone and I am just in shock. I just can't even process it. And our players are still warming up, and slowly the news is starting to come out and you can see it. And these guys' faces are just dropping. And on our team, we have a lot of players who had close relationships with him. A lot of our guys are from Los Angeles. James and Russell are both from LA. Tyson played with him on the Lakers. Austin has a close relationship with him through his father and through being around him. So it was so surreal to watch these guys try to get through warmups. And then I had to go on the pregame show, and we didn't know if we could even talk about it yet because nothing had been officially confirmed. There were all these reports coming out, but there was nothing official from the NBA or anything like that. So we had to go through our pregame show as if nothing was changed. And so it was so hard. I could barely get through my hip because nothing seemed to matter at that point. Nothing I was talking about seemed to be of importance. And we started off the game still, like we didn't really talk about it at the beginning. We just went through the guys did their open. I did my first hit as normal. And then once I was out of my first hit, they were able to talk about it. It had been confirmed. And it was just, nothing. It was a totally different broadcast. I pretty much didn't do any other hits for the rest of the game. Just nothing seemed important at that time. And we were the first game of the day. So there was all this contemplation of whether they were going to cancel games, and they couldn't cancel because we had already started going through warmups for the game. Everyone was there, fans were there. So that's when I think they ultimately made the decision to keep playing games that day. But I did my walk-off with the coach at halftime, and I pretty much simply asked him, what can you say about your team and their ability to come out here and still play under these circumstances? And he was getting emotional even just answering that. So we came in and we knew even if we won, we weren't going to do any sort of walk-off interview. But just being in the locker room after, PR had given some of the players the opportunity, if they wanted to speak, and if they didn't, then they didn't have to. And some of our guys did choose to speak, and it was so emotional. And then we had to play the next day too in Utah. We got right on a plane and we had a back-to-back, and it was just crazy. I mean, it was so surreal and so sad. And I can't even say I grew up a huge Kobe fan. Like, I'm from the East Coast. I respected him, but it was hitting me so hard. And I think we have a different perspective being around the NBA now and being around these players too, and knowing the impact he had. But I actually couldn't believe how upset I was by it. And I think a lot of people felt that way after that happened, was they didn't realize the impact that Kobe had on the wider range and the wider scale. But I was so emotional over it.
That's exactly how I was too. I was just like, I didn't grow up a huge like Kobe fan either, but just like watching it, and I was here in my apartment, I couldn't take my like eyes away. I was on Twitter, I was texting people, I was watching ESPN, and you were just like, oh my gosh. And because of the way I think he died, I think it even hit harder.
Absolutely. I was the same exact way. I was glued to my phone. I was glued to ESPN. I was watching all the tributes, and I was crying, and I was just letting myself cry. And I was like, honestly, it's probably better to just let it out at this point. But it was so surreal and so emotional. And to be, I think, in that first game that was happening as it was all unfolding was just such a crazy emotional day and moment. And I mean, I'm glad I was able to be a part of it to help share some of the stories and the news a part of it. But it's something I'll never forget, to be part of that and to experience that day. It was crazy.
Well, we kind of covered a bunch of sad topics to start off. So let's go on to some positive news. You obviously just got hired with Houston back in October. And I heard that you were actually, for your interview, you were flying from Rome to go do your interview. How did you prep in a plane?
It was so crazy. So my sister was studying abroad this fall in Florence, and my mom had never been outside the country besides like Mexico. So she really wanted to make this trip. When I was abroad, I went to Australia, so they weren't able to come. So we were like, okay, we're going to plan this. We're going to get the whole family to go. It's going to be great. And the week I was leaving, I found out that the Houston job was open, and my agent called me and she set up a Skype interview, and I did a whole Skype interview with them probably 2 days before I left. And then, I mean, my agent knew I was going to Italy. I'm like, all right, just keep me updated. I'm going. And we planned it early in September because I thought I was going back to Cleveland. And so I was like, regardless, I have to be back before media day. So we have to do it this early if we want the whole family to go. So we did that. And so while I was there, my agent texted me and it's like, they want you to come down to Houston for an audition and everything. And they want me to come on Friday. And so I was staying till Sunday in Italy. And I was like, okay, so I'm looking at ways to change my flights. And my agent was like, let me just go back to them and see if they can do it on a Monday instead. And I'm like, okay, that would be really helpful because I'm flying back on Sunday. I'll just go right to Houston from Italy. And they agreed to that. So I, of course, ruins my trip because the whole trip I'm thinking about, oh my God, I have this audition room at the end of the week. I need to prep. And so everyone I'm talking to is like, relax, just relax. You have to enjoy this trip too. You've never been to Italy, like you're with your family. And I'm trying to enjoy it, but in the back of my head, I have this audition that I really want this job. And I'm, of course, thinking about it nonstop. But for most of the trip, I just took a step back and was like, okay, just enjoy it. And then Saturday, we had gone to a couple places during the week. Saturday, we were just going back to Rome. We were leaving Sunday. And so we had already been to Rome when we started the trip. And so my mom and my sisters, they all went and did stuff. And I was like, I can't, I have to go. Today it's going to be my prep day. So they all were exploring Rome. And I just stayed at the hotel all day and was prepping, taking notes, going through it. And then on my flight back, I was still trying to do it, but there's only so much you can do before you're just like, this is overkill and I'm going to freeze if I keep looking at this even more. So I flew from Rome to Amsterdam to New York, and that's where I was supposed to end in New York. But then they booked my flight from New York to Atlanta to Houston after that. So I flew for 26 hours. I got to Houston at like 11:30 at night, and I'm like, I don't even know which way is up at this point because I'm so tired. I'm starving. I'm running on pure adrenaline. I'm like, God, just please let me go to sleep for a little bit. And I slept for a few hours, but I was like, when you're so overtired that you're just like kind of shaky.
You're like wired at that point.
So wired. That's exactly how I was. I'm like, just let me get through this audition smoothly and then we can crash after that. So, yeah, it was crazy. I felt like it was a blur. I just had a bunch of meetings and then I had to go in an audition, and I honestly left and I was like, you know what? I feel pretty good about that. I wouldn't have changed anything. I felt like I gave them who I am as a person and as a reporter. And at the airport, I was so jittery. It was unbelievable. I was completely just crashing down. All the adrenaline was crashing down. But I was like, you know what? I feel like I did as good as I could have, and hopefully they like me and that's what they're looking for. And thankfully 2 days later, I got the call that I got the job, and then I had to move from Cleveland to Houston in 2 weeks. And that was crazy. But well worth it. so happy here. I absolutely love my job. I love the people I work with. It's been such a great experience. So surreal, but I feel like every job I've pretty much gotten so far in the NBA in particular has been last second, and I've been moving within 2 weeks constantly. So it's become my new normal, and I'm just trying to take advantage of it. And hopefully I don't have to move again anytime soon.
Before you were in the NBA, so you kind of took a break in between your jobs a little bit, but before even that, you worked for the Big East Conference. What do you think at that college level that you learned? Because I currently work for the Western Athletic Conference, so I'm
Okay,
like
yep.
in that realm. What do you think you learned in that time with the Big East that has helped you now in your job?
The Big East taught me everything. I went to a Big East school, so when I graduated, I had so many internships and could not get a job. I mean, I was just so flustered, and I was like, I don't think there's anything else I could have done. Why isn't this happening for me? And I think a lot of students that come out of college kind of feel that same stress, and they're just like, what is happening? And I started working as a live stream PA at NBC Sports, which is in Stamford, Connecticut, which is where I'm from. So it was easy for me. I was living at home, and I saw that the Big East was launching a digital network. And so I kind of reached out to them on a whim and was like, hey, I'm Cayleigh. I just graduated from Providence. Here's my reel. Here's my resume. Would love to have the opportunity to speak to you about what you guys are doing with this digital network. And they responded to me and were like, hey, yeah, we're kind of really open right now. We're trying to explore different opportunities. Would love to have you come in. And so I came in and we talked, and they were really open. And I just came in with, of course, some grandiose ideas that were so over the top, but they were like, you know, we'd love to have you a part of this. We don't really know what we're going to do yet, but we're going to try to make it work. And so they had me and another girl, Kim Adams, who is crushing it now. She's working as a sideline reporter for the WNBA on ESPN. She is doing a lot of color analysts for Fox Sports, all these other, and then John Fanta, who is now the face of the Big East. Now they took the three of us on, and we didn't kind of really know what we were going to be doing, but I spent so much time editing, which has helped me tremendously to have that ability, studying just editing packages. And we did some on-camera stuff, not as much at first, and then as it continued to expand and as the network continued to grow more, they gave us more opportunities to work color and do sideline on all different sports, which I think has helped me so much become a more well-rounded reporter, because I've had the opportunity to work with everything from basketball to soccer to swimming and diving, track and field. We touched everything, and that was so awesome. And to work with those college athletes, it's so fun to work with them because they're so just gracious, and especially with those sports that don't necessarily get the attention. It was just a blast to work with them. And I was there for 2 years. I absolutely loved it. I was, getting ready to go into a year 3. I started my year 3 there, and I just had this other opportunity come that I couldn't pass up on. But it taught me so much, and I credit them for so much. And it's so funny now to be in the NBA and to see the crossover you have experience from players that are there that I'm seeing now in the NBA, and our staff at the Big East. Everyone's kind of moving around, and it was just the foundation for me that I grew upon, and I thank them for so much of what's happened to me since.
And so then you went to the Spurs, right? And then you kind of had your hiatus and you were doing just a bunch of freelancing jobs, right?
Yes. So I was in San Antonio for 2 years. I was hired as their digital reporter there. And again, it was like a 2-week thing. I had to pick up, move, and I had never moved really. I went to school in Rhode Island from Connecticut. So that was a really big move for me. It was really cool working for them and being a part of that, because it was my first experience in the NBA, my first experience really living really far away from home. Working in the NBA, I learned a lot. In my second year, I grew a ton and had the opportunity to do a lot more with their broadcast, which is awesome, and build really great relationships within that organization. I still stay in touch with a lot of those people there. And at the end of my second year, unfortunately, the organization was just making cuts, and they decided that they were no longer going to need a reporter. And they were like, it was nothing you did. We love you, but we just are not going to have this position anymore. And it was really shocking and kind of, gut wrenching at first, because you're like, okay, I just moved across the country. I don't have anything else here. I don't know what to do. And so I packed up and moved back home. And, that summer was really tough for me. And I was 25 and unemployed, and was just one of those things where you don't even know what side is up at that. You're just trying to make ends meet and trying to figure it out. And thankfully my parents and my family are so supportive, and they were like, you're coming home, we're going to figure it out. And I had a chance to do a bunch of freelance stuff. I just figured it was better for me to go home because I'm so close to New York City, and I'm all up and down the East Coast. I had the opportunity that I could easily get to places from Boston to Philly, DC, wherever I needed to go, I could get to. So it was a tough summer for me, and I didn't really know what was going to happen. I had auditioned a bunch of places and got a lot of no's, and I was definitely getting to the point where I was a little bit, is this going to work out for me? Am I going to make it? And am I going to be able to do this? And this opportunity with the Cavs came along, and I auditioned for them in September, late September, and I had auditioned for their sideline job. They ended up telling me that they were hiring somebody else, but they wanted to bring me on as well. And at first I was like, I don't know do I want this? But I was like, this is another opportunity. You just have to take it in stride. You're back in the NBA. You're going to be working with another team, which is only going to help you continue to grow. And I had a lot of opportunities to continue to do studio work and do a lot more digital content too. So it wasn't the easiest path, but it was another path on my journey. And, I think losing your job at 25 and then having to pick it up was an eye-opening experience for me, and something that I'm grateful for, because I think sometimes this industry is very unforgiving, and you see a lot of people lose their jobs kind of suddenly, and you never think it's going to be you until it happens. And then it's you, and you have to figure it out. And that was kind of what happened to me, is I just had to figure it out. And I was really upset, and I had a really hard time with it, and it wasn't easy. And I know I thank my family every day for having my back and continuing to push me, and knowing that this is the field that I want to be in and that I should be in. But it was eye-opening for me, and I'm grateful, because again, it just was another step in my journey and another story that I have to share.
As somebody who has a bunch of NBA teams on their resume, like a lot of people look up to you and they were like, oh, I want to be her. You've worked with so many different teams, but would you say that you've probably gotten 10 times more no's than you have yeses?
100%. Like, oh my gosh, it is. I think that's probably the biggest misconception of this industry, is that people just think when you're in these jobs that, oh, she just got this job. And of course, when you post you're going somewhere on Twitter, people just rip you to shreds. They're like, I can't believe she's leaving. And you can't even, of course, it takes everything inside of you not to respond to them, but you're like, just don't respond, don't respond. But you have no idea what I've gone through. You have no idea what my story is. I've said it before, like it would have never been my thought process to have to move to 3 cities in 3 different years. There's no way I would have wanted to. And I still, they're moving across the country 3 times, not on my list. Don't recommend it. Not fun.
Especially 2 weeks before you have to start, right?
Like you're scrambling, you come down, you have 6 hours to find an apartment. You're like, oh my God, here we are. I don't recommend it, but I've gotten so many no's that I can't even describe to you. It's just part of it. It's part of the industry. And I think it's a big misconception. And students, especially coming right out of college, and people that are fresh in the industry, get really frustrated. And I always try to tell them, like, this is just part of it. This is part of your story. This is part of your journey. All of us have experienced it. We still experience it. We get no's all the time. It's just knowing that eventually someone is going to say yes, someone's going to take a chance on you, and that's what you have to keep believing in. And I try to tell people to also take a step back and reflect on what you've been able to accomplish. And I have to remind myself that sometimes too, because there have been moments over the last few years where I've just been frustrated in the position I've been in, or I've lost my job and I'm confused and I'm upset, and I'm like, all right, let's take a step back here and just appreciate what you're able to do. You interviewed Hall of Famers like Manu Ginobili and Tony Parker on a nightly basis. You got to cover the 2016 national championship for men's basketball with Villanova at the Big East. Like, you've had these amazing opportunities, and you were 23 and 24 years old. Like, you have so much time and you have so much room for growth. And of course there's that urgency and you want to just have that job, but it's a process. And I would have never imagined when I was graduating college that I would have lived in Texas for 3 of those 6 years. And here we are, year 3. But it's all part of the journey, and everyone has a different story. No 2 stories are the same. No 2 journeys are the same. Some people go through local news. I happen to go through a digital network. Everyone just finds their own path and creates their own path. And it's so fun to hear how everyone got to where they are, because everyone's story is so different. But if you love it, it's worth it. And I honestly will say that up until this season, like every year I've kind of had moments where I'm like, this doesn't feel right. I still feel like this just isn't this isn't fulfilling what I wanted to do. And I felt sad. And there were just different parts of the jobs that I just didn't love. And that this year I got this job and I was so excited because this is what I've been working for. I wanted to be with the team. I wanted to travel with the team. I wanted to be the main reporter with the group, and I finally got it. And it is everything that I've ever wanted. I absolutely love my job. And I'm finally like, yes, like this was worth it. All of the years of trying to find my way and trying to get to this point led to this. And now I understand that, I was right. This is what I wanted to do. It just took some time. And I try to encourage people by saying, just stick with it. Like I'm telling you, if this is what you want to do, it's going to work out, and you're going to get to that point where you're like, okay, yes, like this is happening right now. And I'm so happy. It just takes a little time.
Well, Cayleigh, you are extremely, extremely good at your job. Just so you are like completely aware, I watch pretty much all your interviews. I'm always amazed by all your questions and how just your pace is so good and how you throw so many numbers and like you like remember everything. I'm utterly amazed by you every single time I watch you. So you are excellent at your job.
You.
If you would say though, there's like one thing, if you would look back in your first couple years on camera, what would you tell yourself to be like, don't do this?
Slow down. And I still say that to myself because I talk so fast, and I go through my clips now and I'm like, oh my God, there are some games where even I know I have a minute in my first hit. And so I just already, that's in my head, that number's in my head. And I look back and I'm like, oh my God, Cayleigh, why are you talking that fast? Even a minute, you don't have to talk that fast. Just slow it down. So that is still something that I will work on all the time. And sometimes you need someone to just look back at it with you and you're like, oh my God, what am I doing? I'm talking like I have a race to get to right now. I don't understand why I'm doing that. So that's probably my biggest thing is pace. I mean, my family always tells me that I talk way too fast, and it's still something that I work on and try to work on every single day. But just trying to be, I think, a well-rounded reporter in different ways as well. I take a lot of pride in asking good questions, and that's something that I've really worked on with my broadcasting coach over the years. But wanting to
with Jill, right?
Yes, I work with Jill Montgomery.
I just started working with her.
She is the best. I mean, she has literally changed my life in terms of being a broadcaster. She has helped me exponentially. From the first time I worked with her, she just tells it like it is, and she's not going to sugarcoat it. And you honestly need that in this industry, because you'd rather you hear it from her than somebody that's trying to hire you. And if she's going to make you better. She has totally changed my approach on how I ask questions, how I go into my hits, how I go into preparing for a game. It's changed me completely. And I give her so much credit for where I am today. She had to keep me sane through my trip to Italy. I can't tell you how many times I was reaching out to her. She's like, can you just take a breath? And you're in Italy right now. You're going to be fine. Just enjoy it. But no, she is the best. And just wanting to continue to grow. I mean, I'm a reporter now. That's my main job. But with my position here with AT&T Sportsnet, I'm also going to be filling in as a host and a reporter for the Astros, which I'm really excited about once baseball comes back. I spent some time at the desk in San Antonio and Cleveland, but I'm really excited to spend some more time at the desk and just kind of expand my role in that way, because my primary role is being a reporter, but I'd like to get a lot more desk time as well. So I'm excited for that.
You mentioned research and how Jill's really helped you like prepare for games. What would you say is one of your top tips for doing research? What's like the main thing that you tend to look up?
I spend so much time reading articles, and I just try to read as much as possible. Of course, I have notifications on Twitter from all of the main NBA reporters out there, because I just want to be as up to date as possible. I think a big advantage for me coming into this Rockets job was that I've had the past NBA experience. So I am very familiar with the league, everything that's going on. But it changes from game to game, I think. For me, this was my first year going into a full NBA season where I was covering every single game, reporting on every single game. And it's a lot of games. Like, you have a game every other day or every night, pretty much. So my focus is the Rockets, obviously. And there's only so much you can say when you're on game 42 and you've been talking about these guys every single night for the last 3 months. So you have to kind of deep dive, for me, more into statistics and seeing what's going on and different trends in the NBA. But then there are some times where if we're looking at this opponent for the first time this season, I try to dive into them a little bit more because, when you see the Denver Nuggets for the fourth time, there's not that much that's changed. And you can only say you've shared one story in one game and you can't really share it in the fourth game. So it's challenged me to do more research and to try to get more creative. I do end up relying on stats a lot more just because of more on a game-to-game basis where we rank against certain opponents in different things. But yeah, it's tough. It's tough when you have that many games week in and week out.
You have really good relationships with the players. You can tell that when you're doing interviews. You guys laugh together, you can get a smile out of them, which you don't always see from courtside reporters. How would you say that you continue to build those relationships, especially being in your first year?
I take a lot of pride in my ability to build the relationships. I think when you're around them, you can sort of read them. And I learned that in San Antonio, dealing with some players some that were just really open and always great and fun. And then you deal with Coach Pop, who sometimes wanted to talk and sometimes he didn't want to talk. And LaMarcus Aldridge, who everyone says is one of the most misunderstood players in the league. He's just kind of quiet. And if you just deal with him in a polite, respectful manner, you're going to get that mutual respect from him. And that's something that I've taken a lot of pride on, is kind of treading lightly at first, not being pushy. And again, my job as the courtside reporter isn't necessarily to break news or to try to get these guys to say something to bait them in. It's more of sharing their story. So it's so important to build that trust because you want them to feel comfortable with you. It's kind of just a day by day thing. You feel them out. You start to get to know them by being around them. And for me, in my position, I spend so much time with them, or we have practice or a game every single day. We're traveling with the team. So you kind of see them in different situations. Not that you're necessarily spending a ton of time with them, but just seeing them off the court too. Whether you're going into the hotel together, you're past them on the street when you're going to dinner, you just kind of, there's that trust where they know that you're kind of part of them too. And then when you're in that game situation and you're in that media scrum situation, how you ask the questions, it just takes a little time.
How do you make sure to keep that professional relationship with them? Because I'm sure it's easy when you're traveling with each other and it's midnight and you guys are all getting on a plane, to just like kind of sit and chat and gossip and everything like that. But how do you make sure to maintain that professional relationship?
It's not that hard. For me, it's, we have different areas on the plane. The players sit in one area, the coaches sit in another, and the broadcast crew kind of sits in another area. You definitely have moments when you're getting on the plane or walking through and they're walking through and they joke with you. And that's, I think, just comes with, being around each other all the time and seeing each other in those different situations. But I just try to, keep my distance, keep my space. Again, when you're in those situations, you can read when it's appropriate, when it's not appropriate. And I think there's just some sort of common sense in that. And for me, I'd rather keep more space than not. I take my job very seriously and I pride myself on being professional. And I love the team and I love the guys and I love working with them. But I would never put myself in a situation where I feel like it could be misconstrued or make someone feel uncomfortable. So for me, it's just kind of, keeping your space, but when there's an appropriate time, there's guys coming on the plane and they're joking about the way your hair looks after you just came off you have your hair in a ponytail, it's crazy curly after you just did the game. And it's just one of those situations where you're around them and they get to know you and it's comfortable in that sense, but there's definite boundaries. And I think as a reporter that you're traveling with them, what those boundaries are.
When you're watching the game, what are you typically trying to listen to? Because obviously you're not calling the game, so like there's no reason, but you still need to be aware of what's going on. But what else is something that you like pay attention to?
I'm definitely listening to different trends and stats in the game, whether there's runs. I can't necessarily always keep track of those. So I'll listen to our play-by-play if they're like, all right, the Rockets are on a 15-4 run. And depending on when it is in the game, I usually try to track just everything and have it listed down, because you never know if that's going to be a turning point in the game or what have you. So if there are little tidbits, little notes that I just hear them say, I'll usually write them down. I have gone through notepads. I actually have one here, which people won't be able to see because I just got back from the gym. I look crazy, but this is one of my notebooks from this year where I'm just like writing tons and tons. I just spend time writing notes, and I don't even know where my notebook is from this year, the rest of the season. But I just go through notebooks like it's nothing, because I just try to take as many notes during the game as possible, because you just don't know as it's coming down if there might be a connection to something. So for me, it's been just kind of getting as much information down as possible. And then, of course, you have your notes from beforehand, which I try to rely on too, whether it's the game notes, the updated stats that I kind of go through the night before, and just follow those trends. But again, for me, it's taking down usually as many as I possibly can, just because you never know when or if that's going to connect something at the end of the game.
When you're doing halftime interviews or post game, would you say that there's always kind of one question you have just in the back of your head in case coach either answers all of the questions you had for one and like one thing, or a player does? How do you kind of gauge those types of questions?
Yeah, I usually try to go into it so my halftime interviews, I usually can ask 2 questions. Post game, it's usually 3. Sometimes we can squeeze in 4, depending on how they answer the question. It really depends on the player. I have some players who will go on and on and on, and I'll have to cut it short. And then I have some that are very short, and I'm like scrambling to come up with another question. Usually I try to have an idea going into the topics that I want to touch on. Just depending on trends of the game. Same with halftime. And I've had a couple times at halftime where one of our assistant coaches just gives really long answers. He talks about pretty much everything that happens in the half. So I'm like, all right, you're good to go. But yeah, I usually try to keep something in the back, just like, okay, if he hits on all of these topics and I didn't even get to ask another question, what else can I ask? And it usually is something along the lines of, building off of this game or takeaways from this game that we can use, because we probably have a game either the next day or the following day. So that's like my safety go-to on what you can take away from tonight's game to build off of, improve on, something like that, to heading into the next game, just because, again, we usually are playing either the next night or the night after.
When it comes to how you dress, first of all, incredible style. You do an awesome job.
Oh, thank you.
I especially love when you did, you had a yellow dress. And I actually think it was one of the days that I had like just found you. Jill had actually mentioned you, and I was like, oh, I gotta look her up. And you were wearing this yellow dress, and I was like, this girl is killing it. So what would you say is your go-to fashion advice?
I love clothes. It's funny because I went to a private school in high school, and then so I was in a uniform, and then in college I just wore sweatpants all the time, and I didn't have a ton of style. But then when I started working, I really was like, okay, I'm gonna up this, and now I'm obsessed. I'm crazy. Thankfully, I now have Rent the Runway, which is amazing, life-changing, and I don't know how I would get through an NBA season without it, because there's no way I can buy all those clothes needed for 82 regular season games. But leading up to this season, I never had Rent the Runway. I love Zara. It's my favorite store. I live in there. But for me, I always go back to black, which I'm trying to add color. That's a big thing. My mom always yells at me for wearing too much black. So this season, I've really tried to add more color. But for me, I always try to keep it really professional. Like sometimes I like to add a little edge. I'll wear like a long vest or something. But for the most part, I like to just keep it pretty clean. Again, it's funny because I have some dresses that like I wore when I was at the Big East. And I put them on now and I'm like, just a little too short. And it's not even really short, but I think as you get older, just your comfort level in certain things changes. And I'm always like, maybe it's a little bit too short, so that one's gonna go. I just like to look really professional and keep it clean. Of course, you have people on Twitter. I had someone telling me that my dress when I sat was like, you're tempting people with your legs. I'm like, I'm wearing a knee-length dress. I am not. I take a lot of pride in keeping myself professional, and I think that's just like one of my things that I pride myself on in terms of work. I think there are a lot of reporters out there who obviously feel the same. And I always am following everyone to see where they're getting their clothes, because there's so many out there that I'm like, oh, I like her style. I like how she looks. So it's fun to keep tabs on everybody, see what they're wearing, what they're doing. And I think it's a fun part of the industry. Obviously, you don't want people to be focused on your outfits. You want them to be focused on what you're saying, but it also is an added fun thing, especially for the women in the industry who always are trying to up their fashion game as well.
It always helps for a cute Instagram photo, right? Like you hopefully
Absolutely.
can always get a photo.
Oh, that is the thing. And sometimes, going into the game, you're like, someone needs to take a picture of me tonight because I love my outfit.
It's like you want them to pay attention to what you're saying when you're doing the interview. But if you're going to get a photo and it looks cute, like that's an extra bonus.
So,
right?
I've had games where I've come in, I'm like, all right, I'm going to ask my camera guy to take a picture of me tonight because I just love this dress. And it needs to be seen, because my mom will text me, and she's got League Pass, so she always watches, but she can only see this much of my outfit. So she's like, I want to see the bottom half. She's like, someone needs to take a picture. And I'm not one of those people that's like, I need a picture every night. But sometimes I'm like, all right, my mom needs to see this outfit. Can you take a picture of me?
And it's funny too, like, especially with social media and how big it is, like most people are like, heck yeah, like I got you. I'll take a picture. No worries.
Oh, for sure. When you get someone that comes in and has taken the different angles, I'm like, I appreciate you more than you know. Trust me.
Exactly. You talked a little bit about how people will critique you. How have you dealt with getting critiqued now via Twitter and Instagram?
Yeah, I will say that I haven't probably gotten as much as some people have, but I think when you initially get a new job or you leave a job and it goes out public and stuff, you face that criticism right away. And it's funny because it's usually the new fans that have never heard you or never met you. And I definitely saw that when I first got here in Houston. And it hurts, and it's hard because you're trying not to read it. And of course, everyone always says, don't read the comments. And it's more, I have to tell my family that because my mom just takes it so personally. Like, Mom, everyone says, don't read the comments. It's fine. It's people that are hiding behind an egg on Twitter or whatever. It doesn't matter. I have this job and I'm proud of that. And I'm going to make it work, and it's going to be great. And no matter where you go, someone's not going to like you, and that's just inevitable. And so you kind of just have to build thick skin and go from there. And I've been very lucky that I haven't gotten too much negative feedback, but there's always sometimes there's somebody, and you just kind of have to let it roll off. And of course, there was one time I was going through a thread and I was like, oh my God, someone take my phone away from me because I'm going to start crying. But it's just part of the industry, and unfortunately something that we're all going to have to deal with at some point. But I do have to try to take my own advice. And when you do see something, you just can't read into it because it's one person and they're hiding behind social media. And there are so many other people who are supporting you and love your work. And you just have to take that with a grain of salt and continue on.
At that same note, though, sometimes you can almost get a big head if so many people are like, oh my God, you did so great today. You know what I mean? How do you make sure that you continue to always keep moving forward in your craft?
I mean, I think it's nice to hear when people are supportive of you, but I think you also, depending on where you are in your journey and what you've been through, like you kind of know the process you've been through. So I think there's a personal feeling of, you need to continue to be better and you need to experience self-growth, and there's appreciation for where you are. But I think you as a person know that you're not even at close to being at the top of your craft. And I know that that's how I feel on a daily basis is I know when I come off of a hit and I'm like, that was a good one. It was clean. I hit it. It was great. But there are plenty of times where I'm like, damn, I stumbled on that word. Like I can do better than that. So I think you as a person just know where you're at, and you experience it too on your journey. Like I'm in my first year of really feeling like I'm in a job that I love and that I have worked so hard for. And I don't even feel like I'm close to being where I need to be, and that there's so much room for growth for me. And I think that's just something that you personally know and you personally learn. And I think somewhat to an extent that every reporter feels that way, no matter where they are in their career, is that there's always something you can do to be better. And I've kind of used this time to go through my old clips from this year and just, again, listening to them being like, Cayleigh, you got to slow down. You need to take a breath, girl. What are you doing? But it's been a good time to go back and listen to myself and be like, okay, when this season does pick up or when we start again, you got to slow down. Like, these are some things that you can continue to work on. And so for me, it's been a sort of a period of reflection, but I think just you as a person know where you're at. And I think it doesn't really, it's great to hear positive feedback. And of course you love that, but it's always kind of on you to take onus on where you are as a reporter and where you're going to continue to be.
I actually think that's really funny you mentioned that. And I think it's great advice too. Cause your parents are always like, oh, that was good. And I'm like, oh, that was horrible. I was like, no, like, I'm so not happy with that. And I do that like every single time. And it drives me crazy. Cause I want to be positive, right? You just want to like move on to the next hit and be like, okay, this one's over. You can't do anything about it. But it's really hard to like turn that page sometimes. But I was actually on a Jane Slater Zoom class earlier last week, and she has football for dummies because she always wants to keep learning things about the game. Is there anything you do to continue to learn about the game?
Yeah, I mean, again, like, read as much as I possibly can. I try to read every article that's coming out, and I have notifications from every reporter. I want to keep reading about what the changes are, and there's so much constantly changing in the game. And I'm very lucky that our analyst here at the Rockets, Matt Bullard, is always on top of all of the latest trends and how the game is changing to becoming so 3-point heavy. And obviously the Rockets are at the forefront of that, and how it's such a better percentage of shot and the analytics. I'm in a team that's so into analytics right now, so I've learned so much about efficient field goal percentage, which I didn't really even know about. And I grew up around the game, and I'm learning stuff right now. So I'm very grateful to be around a lot of people here in Houston and with this organization that are constantly at the forefront of what's changing in the game, from our general manager, who is an analytics king, to, again, our color analyst, who just is so involved in all of that stuff that he's constantly sending us emails of articles too. It's helped me so much because the style of play here in Houston is constantly evolving and kind of going with those trends. And it's been really cool to see, because I was with an organization starting off in San Antonio that played really old school basketball and still sort of does. And now I'm with this organization who plays a totally different style, and they rely on a totally different brand of analytics. And that's been really cool for me.
Yeah, no, that's really awesome. Well, Cayleigh, I've taken an hour of your time, so I want to let you go and get back to whatever you're planning to do today. But thank you so much for taking the time. You had such great advice, and your story is so reassuring to hear. I hope you don't take that in a negative way, because sometimes you get stuck and you're like, man, I just want to like continue moving on. So it's so great to see somebody in your position who has kind of done all of that but still is succeeding. So thank you so much.
Oh, Rachel, thank you for having me. No, I don't take that in a negative way at all. I really want people to hear it and to understand that if you're struggling through it and you're kind of, feel like you're stuck a little bit, that it's totally normal, and it's okay to feel that way, because we all kind of go through, like I said, different processes and different journeys. And your time is coming. You just got to stick with it. And trust me, I've gone through the ups and downs, and I felt like I wasn't going to get there either, but there is a light at the end of the tunnel, I promise.
Well, I'm so glad to hear that you are loving your job with the Rockets. You're doing an amazing job, like I mentioned. So thank you again, though, for your time.
No problem. Thanks, Rachel.
I loved having this talk with Cayleigh. She was so nice. I probably could have talked to her for an hour after we were done with the interview. And hopefully she's able to go home now that the NBA has announced some teams will be returning. It'll be interesting to see what they do out in Houston. Again, I hope everybody is safe, staying healthy. I know I say that in every episode, but I am thinking about all of you that are listening to this podcast, and we will see you next week.